Hey everyone, today for another vlog, and the prompt for today is again about modernity, and the prompt is, do people find modern jobs meaningful? Question mark, bottom text. So, what prompted me to think about this is, well, I'm writing just putting down my thoughts through blog posts about, modernity, and I've written the first one about want, the societal program, what we are programmed to want and to think is normal about everyday life, and it is normal, right? That is the thing. It is normal, but normal doesn't mean healthy or great or what you would want out of life and so on. So that was what my first post was about. I'm slowly but surely, not as quickly as I wish, but slowly but surely writing the next one. And so the second one will be about jobs, and because I think it's fair to say that like most complaints in life are related to one's job, because you need the job to earn money to live, right? That's fair, and so it's something you have to be engaged in some fashion, in some form of work. And corporate work, corporate modern work has a lot of things to complain about, for sure. There are many valid complaints, so I think it's fair to say that jobs are a pretty big source of complaints for most people, me myself included. But the reason why I talk about modernity is mainly because I don't want to work at a corporate job for my entire life. So what do I mean by corporate job? Just very simply, I simply mean like a desk job where you sit in a chair and stare at a computer all day, whatever that the task within the whatever the task is involved. So it's either programming or like I don't know what people do, like banking, accounting, I don't know, human resources, advertising. I don't know what people do. For me, it's like a mix of programming and math. But in my experience, I mean, I'm still very young, so I don't really know those other jobs. But in my experience, I doubt that those other jobs really differ much. I mean, they might be easier or harder. They might involve different skill set, but like ultimately, it's about sitting at the desk and listening to orders. That's the main thing, and there's hardly anything fulfilling about those jobs, and I think that's a huge source of unhappiness within life. So there's this great blog post. So related to it, there's this great blog post called "Corporate Man's Search for Meaning." So obviously a reference to the book "Man's Search for Meaning," but in the corporate world environment, and it basically describes just how utterly meaninglessness, how in modern work it's you just don't find any meaning. There's no meaning, no satisfaction, no fulfillment, no sense of power. You just feel completely disconnected from life and from yourself and from other people as well. So I think it's a great read. It's really well written. I I wish I had good writing abilities, but I mean I'm writing more and more, but I feel like my writing is very crude. And on the other hand, this person's writing is really, it's very genuine, right? It's not, it's a very no bullshit type of writing, which I like, and it's also very genuine, and it has good prose. Like it flows well, and it's describes well one's feelings towards the modern work, I feel like. So yeah, I think that's the main complaint I find at, well, I guess I don't know what most people complain about in modern jobs. I feel like they complain that they don't get paid enough, or I don't know. But like, I feel like the main complaint when it comes to modern jobs for me is like the complete meaninglessness of it. Like it's one thing for it that it's not how to say, it's not satisfying and all that, but this would be a lot better if I actually agreed with the direction of society and technological progress and all that, right? Problem is that I don't agree at all. I find it all so nihilistic. Like, what is society headed to when it comes to like progress and all that? In my experience, it's just more technology and more comfort and more pleasure. Like there is no overarching like this is what we want. It just all feels like a completely hedonistic and nihilistic trend of, just more materialism, more pleasure, more distraction. There's no like genuine thing that is like the goal, it seems like. Because society as a whole, I would say, is fairly unconscious, but I don't really want to go into it because like without proper writing and thinking. But yeah, I would say just society as a whole is just, it doesn't have like a direction that is conscious. Like a human being can decide what they want for themselves. They can be honest with themselves and see and go for that. But I feel like society doesn't have that, and as a result, because of its unconsciousness, it just goes for like what is the most easy and the easiest way to just maintain itself, basically. And it seems like the world we're in nowadays is a world where people just distract themselves to not face themselves. It seems like most people spend most of their time distracting themselves through entertainment, of course. Through even food has become a sort of escape, honestly, nowadays. It just feels more entertainment than sustaining your body. Work seems like it also is a huge escape because you just like dissociate all day and you don't even face the reality that it's not something you want to do and all that. So yeah, I don't agree with the direction of society. So it makes work very, very unpleasant because like all this grinding, as they call it, for money, it doesn't feel meaningful at all. Like I don't care about technological progress because like there are many ways in which technological progress does improve our life, but like at this point, like the main thing that we do out of technology seems to be just those just gadgets and bullshit that we don't need in our lives, that we artificially create the need for. Like does anyone really need an AI that can just do anything for them? Like is that really what life is about? Is that really add more to life? Like do we really need things like all this like Funko Pops and all these material shit that they sell to us? Does anyone really need that? Like do we really need more and more technology? Like the internet is great, don't get me wrong. The internet is great, but it also is the source of such massive mind-numbing, time-consuming distraction. Like it's, on the other hand, it's also the source of it also that allows you to reach people that you never would have met and all that. So in some ways it's great, but like in other ways it's not so good at all, and really feels like we have as a society, again, not as a conscious decision. Like I don't think society's this direction is a conscious thing, but it seems like society has veered towards a very anti-life society. Really, it's really weird. Like it feels like everything is against life. It feels like everything is about being as mechanical and requiring as little consciousness as possible. Like you just listen to your boss's orders, so you don't have to think. You just listen to someone else's idea, so you don't have to think either. You're not connected with your body. You're not connected with your emotions and your dreams and all that. Like it feels like it's so against human, and like I'm sorry that's going to sound cliche, but like it really feels like it's a mechanical world, like where the machines are really what we want, and it's all about productivity, bro. Like, and so I mean, if I'm a bit rambly, but this is just me dumping my thoughts, and I might try to create like a narrative, but I think creating sense is easier through written things. So yeah, about what I just said about productivity, like this whole thing about productivity to me is complete nonsense. Again, about me not agreeing with society's direction, because okay, you can be very productive, but my question, to me, it just seems such a natural question to ask, is like, what are we being productive towards? And it's, again, I don't agree with the direction of society, so why should I care about being productive? I don't think being productive is inherently a good thing. Like, you can be productive towards doing horrible shit in life. You can be productive towards destroying the ecological environment, which is what we're involved in doing. You can be productive towards, making people addicted to your product, or you can be productive towards creating needs that no one else, that no human ever had until you created the need or the desire. I don't know, it's not a need, or, what I mean by that is like, advertising for products that people never would have desired if you never created the advertisement. Or you can be very productive to, I don't know, create disinformation through your site, like creating a site that makes it very easy to share disinformation and where people just share things even though they are wrong, and it's easier to reshare something than to actually check whether something is true. So that is more social media, on Twitter it's easier to share something and retweet it than it is to check it for 10 seconds if it's true or not. So that's what I mean by that. It's fucking scary. So like, I don't hold productivity as an inherently good thing. I don't hold technological progress as inherently good either. Technological progress increases our power, which I believe is why society has unconsciously had more and more technology. Again, it's not that we decide as a collective. This is my own take, but I just want to be clear. My own take is that we don't decide consciously as a collective to have more and more technology. Rather, the reason why technological progress is the thing that everything is about, right? Like economical growth is also about technological progress. Is that the reason why this direction is because it increases society's power, and society being powerful is important because that's how it maintains itself. So you could imagine that if our civilization didn't care about power anymore, or technological prowess, to me they're kind of the same thing. You could imagine that like another part of the world would try to become more powerful, and they would eventually dominate everyone else, right? So it's kind of like the struggle of power that's imposed onto us because we are stuck in this like game theoretical relationship with one another. So if one person doesn't do it, and by do it I mean become very powerful and have a lot more technology and all that, each civilization fears that another one will do it. So that's what I mean by game theoretical relationship. It's like the prisoner's dilemma, if you're familiar with that. So this is how I feel about society as a whole, like why technology is so central to thing. But here's the thing, right? That's as much as I can see that in society, and I don't know how accurate that is, but that is how I make sense of it. I don't care about technology or progress when it doesn't increase my life. Yeah, I just don't care. Like I don't own like a smartphone. I don't see what I would bring to my life, and I care about my own life. I don't care about increasing the productivity of the society I live in. Yeah, I mean, I feel like my philosophy is actually very simple. I care about my own life, and if there's something I don't like, I want to change or at least understand it. And yeah, so to get back on the topic of jobs, so the reason why I started talking so much about society is because jobs feel meaningless, right? And so to come back on the question, the initial question is, what, like, do people find modern jobs meaningful? I personally don't find jobs meaningful because, well, I don't agree with the direction of society as I've expanded on. But that just makes me wonder, right? Do other people find modern jobs meaningful? Because there are two main theories, and I don't know which one is true, and one of them seems really scary to me. The first one, which is really scary to me, is that people actually do find the modern world meaningful, and they just love the modern jobs, and they find it great to like have more progress and have more technology and all that. I find it scary because that means that people are willingly engaging in all this, like this this hyper consumerism, and being like spending all your time sitting in a chair and not taking care of your body so you can get more, so you can accumulate more. I find it pretty scary that someone would be into that consciously. And the other one, which is like pretty fucking sad, but I think it's more true, is that no, actually, most people don't find it meaningful. It's just that they it's too painful to admit to themselves that this is the type of life they lead, and that they don't find it meaningful, but they don't want to think about meaning in their life because yeah, I mean, meaning has by and large been eroded, right, by uh, um, secularism, like as in like no, as in the fact that we don't live in a religious world anymore. Like obviously the death of God and all that. It was rather easy or at least simple to find meaning when the entire world was religious, or at least the world you lived in was religious, because you know everything was about God, right? Like eventually reaching heaven, or at least becoming like a good Christian in while you're on Earth, something like that, right? So meaning was very simple, right? There was no question. You were just a Christian, and you wanted to reach heaven and to be a good Christian when you're on Earth. So, but in the modern world, it's obviously very different because there's no like overarching religion. Christianity is still here, but doesn't have the same dominating power on people's minds as it used to have. So my intuition, at least, is that no, people don't find modern jobs meaningful at all. It's just that they don't have any other. They just don't know any better, and it's too painful to admit that there is no meaning in your life, because meaninglessness is very, very scary, right? And I think what people do is that they just distract themselves all the time with, for example, first of all, the treadmill of like the to-do list, right? Like I'm at work and there's like this list of things you need to do, and you know it gives me a sense of progression. The fact that you know I'm taking off items from the to-do list, it feels like I'm making progress. Again, the word progress is very, very, very common in the modern world. Feeling like you're progressing. As I've said, I don't agree with what. I don't agree that there's something people are progressing towards, but okay, that's definitely a feeling that there is. That's definitely a very common feeling in the modern world, that people do things to progress. So that's, I think, one way that people distract themselves is like just the general sense of like crossing things off the to-do list, being productive and all that. Second one is obviously entertainment. Like entertainment is so ubiquitous nowadays. Like you could, with a smartphone, you could literally be entertained all the time. But like while you're not at work, you could just you could like fire a podcast while you're in the car, and then when you're home, you have access to a computer or your phone, and you're just always watching something, always scrolling and all that. Like it's and entertainment is obviously worth dedicating an entire post about. It's very sad that this is what we have unconsciously again decided is like what life is about when we don't have to preoccupy ourselves with survival. It's like entertainment. Just to throw the quick thesis I want to have about entertainment. Entertainment feels way more like apathy to me, as was noted by Meta Nomad in his series Exiting Modernity. He also had a post about entertainment. He noted that entertainment is mainly about apathy, and I would totally agree. Entertainment is, I really don't. Maybe it's just me projecting, but I really don't find myself really enjoying entertainment. It just feels like a way to pass time and like to distract yourself. So I think that's another huge way in which people distract themselves from the meaninglessness of their jobs and maybe their life. Is uh, constant entertainment. And the third one would be also like those super, I don't know how to describe them, conversations, small talk. Like they don't feel like conversations to me. I don't know how people feel about like small talk, but here's how I would describe it. To me, it feels like people are trying to again distract themselves from their own life, so they just try to fill time and fill like the space of silence, so to speak. But it feels like they're trying to fill time and silence through speaking. This is what it feels like to me. Like what people talk about, it just feels so irrelevant. It really feels like a filler, right? Like just like entertainment feels like a time filler. Conversations and small talk and gossip, they also feel like a filler. Like it doesn't feel like there's anything being said. not just intellectually, but one of my complaints is that they're just intellectually so fucking dead. Like my mind just goes numb when I hear the conversations and gossip. But another part that really makes me sad is that they're not genuine conversations either. Like people don't. I've said that in another, like in my previous on my vlog before, my previous one. But like the problem is that with most conversations I have is that they're not intellectual, but they're not emotional either. Like they're not authentic. It's just people trying to fill time and just talk about really safe things. They're just gossiping about other people, and they're talking about like, like, oh, did you see that video that this guy made, or like, did you see that news, or like, yeah, it's people really talk about like stuff that would actually impact their own life, but yeah. So I think these are the main things that people do when it comes to the meaningless in their jobs, and I don't know, maybe there are people who also. Do you guys see the? Alright, so so I just got sorry, I just got connected on. So yeah, I think these are the main things that people do in response to the meaningless of their job, and um, yeah, it's understandable, honestly. I distract myself too, not as much nowadays. I feel like I just have things to do, I have things to do, but I'm also tired, so I'm not really, also distract myself a lot. And yes, it's understandable, but I really don't want to make it sound like I'm some person bashing other people. Like the modern world is really tough in many ways. It doesn't seem like it. Like it really seems like someone just complaining about things. Like oh, look at those people complaining while they're at this super comfortable job, and they work like 35 hours a week, 37 hours, 38 hours a week. Meanwhile, people used to work 60 to 80 hours a week in the mines, and in super grueling conditions, 6 times a week. I get that, I get that. The modern world is easy in many ways, but I think it's also really soul crushing in other ways. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me being a fucking bitch. I don't know. But to me, the meaninglessness part is very obvious. Like, it's really soul crushing to work at something that doesn't feel meaningful. The other part is also like just physical tiredness that comes from sitting all day. Like, and also like, yeah, like it's really worth having the point of it's so it's so annoying to it's not annoying. It's really awful for your body to sit all day, and like, because human beings really need to move, right? Like we're not made to just sit in a small space and not do anything. And like because we're looking at a screen, we are really dissociated from our body. The fact of sitting alone is very dissociative, I would say. Like you're not really in touch with your body when you're just sitting and not in contact with the floor and the body and all that and moving. But because we spend a lot of time on screen, we just dissociate and we spend all of our attention on what is inside the screen rather than ourselves. So we really externalize our life. And I would say this is a very common general trend in modern world, is that we externalize our lives. Like we don't spend time with ourselves actually. So yeah. So I'm not sure why I started talking about this, but like, the modern world, yeah, what I was expanding on is that the modern world is difficult in many ways. The main one being meaninglessness, the other one being dissociation and trauma. So I think trauma is also worth talking about in its entire, as an entirely separate blog post or vlog. Like it's it's hard to say. Like, I do think that trauma has always been a thing in society. Like I think it's been a main tool that society uses to get people hooked, so to speak. More like, do things that they might not want. Coerce is the word. Coerce people into doing things. Because shame. Because when you traumatize people, you make it so that they police themselves rather than you needing to always tell them what to do. So you might have heard of the anecdote of like a dog with a collar where you can send electrical shocks to the dog. And what you could do is that instead of building a fence to prevent the dog from moving to outside of a certain boundary, what you could do is like you could create a shock if it gets too far from a certain location, right? And so what you could do after like enough time of conditioning the dog is that you could actually remove the collar from the dog, and the dog would stop. The dog wouldn't move outside of the boundary you delimited with the electrical shocks. Like even though the shocks are no longer here, the dog has internalized the boundary so much that it would never dare to go outside again. Because the dog as an alive being tries to, at least that's how I understand it, it tries to minimize pain. So there's no real reason why you would try to constantly poke the boundary and see if the shock is still there. So it has internalized the pain. And I think this is something very similar to human beings actually, is that we so like for the metaphor, the electrical shock is like the trauma we feel, and the boundary is like the societal program, and it's certain boundaries and certain rules, like, and the trauma is it's very strong in school, especially in my experience. At least I've experienced a lot of trauma in school. And so even though we are no longer in school and we are now adults and we are, have a lot of more resources and are a lot more independent, and we might not even get into traumatizing situation, the fact that we're still traumatized from school means that we still act on, so to speak, the previous, our childhood barriers, that we have internalized, so to speak. So I think trauma has been a very universal strategy for society to cause individuals to work for it. And so the reason why I talk about this, so I'm so rambly, I'm sorry. So yeah, trauma has been so the reason why I talk about this is that trauma is very universal, right? And I just mentioned in regards to like jobs and all that. But like I think that people behind us also had trauma, but I don't know why, but it feels especially bad nowadays. Maybe it's because people are more aware of it. That is a very real possibility. I think that is actually that is probably the main possibility, that people are just more aware of trauma. But I think also is that the fact that we're so dissociated from our body, from all this modern job that consists in sitting all day. And when you're dissociated from your body, you don't process trauma as well. Because processing trauma is it's a lot easier when you're in touch with your body and actually feeling it and not running away from its sensations. So I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, in what ways is the modern world harder? I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's mainly like a mental one, where like we're exposed to so many ideas and what we should be doing and what other people are enjoying in life, and like this constant pressure to be something, to be someone else. At the same time, is it really a new thing? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if the modern world is difficult per se, but what I can say for sure is that it's very deceptive, very deceptive. Like it's full of things that look appealing from afar, but are actually not fulfilling in any way. And yeah. So I want to come back to modern jobs, because I feel like I haven't talked that much about modern jobs actually. So maybe I should make an actual. Yeah. So as you can see, I'm a bit all over the place, and that's why I'm making the blog posts. I've only made one right now, so. But I'm making blog posts because I want to like. What the good thing about writing is that it's a lot more structured, and you can see your ideas on some medium that is external to you. And as a result, it's a lot better to like create a structure of thought and make your thoughts like solidified, so to speak. Whereas speaking, it's a lot more. Speaking is a lot easier, as in things come out easier in my experience, but it's also a lot more rambly and not as structured. But it's also more authentic, in my opinion. Like when you just like when the things come out, they really come out well with speaking. Like they come out much more alive, and there's also a lot more nuance when you can speak and all that. But yeah. So yeah. Do people find modern jobs meaningful? To come back to it, I would say no. And I find it's really sad that the world we live in is like filled with people who are not happy with their lives, and they just keep doing it. Like it's really sad that it's the state of affair we're in. In Corporate Man's Search for Meaning, the post I'm talking about, he talks about, and I think this is a very common thing, right? But it's he describes it very well. This complete alienation from people around you, and yet you realize that you're surrounded by so many people, and you feel like you can't talk to anyone. Like the juxtaposition of being surrounded by so many people and feeling incredibly lonely and feeling like you can't talk about it to anyone. It's so weird. It's so weird and like really crushing to the self. I feel like, yeah, like I don't know. Like I also get the feeling that I can't talk to anyone, and yet, on Twitter, for example, it's very clear that like people talk about this all the time. But when it comes to people around me, there's always this sense of like, I can't talk to people about this and the reason why I don't talk to people around me is because first of all, I'm not exactly close with them. But second of all, I know that those are not people who are going to be willing to change their lives for it, It's just going to turn into complaining without changing. And so I personally don't engage with people at my workplace or other places about like, not wanting to be part of the modern world. So I keep it for myself personally, That's why I wish to remain anonymous for now with my vlogs, for example. Also because I don't want to be fired, because I complain so much about the world that I feel like I would be fired if I don't know, maybe I'm just paranoid, but okay. Yeah. He so in the blog post I'm mentioning, which not mine, right? Like the other one, Corporate Message for Me, he expands a lot more like the bullshit part of like hierarchy and monogems, and I feel like it's kind of worth talking about. Even Jesus Christ, I've talked for 32 minutes, and I feel like I've said nothing of substance. So he talks about like 2 parts, which is like the domestication of people. 2 parts that I want to mention, like the domestication of people with like rules and pleasure and all that. I think I've kind of mentioned that already with talking about trauma. But yeah, the bureaucracy is worth mentioning. Like, modern works are meaningless. I'm really bad at that word. Modern jobs are meaningless, and that is one really bad aspect. But the other bad aspect is the fact that they're so bureaucratic. Like there is really no satisfaction to get from a job. It feels like nowadays they're so bureaucratic that anything you do has to go through like 20 layers of bureaucracy, and as a result, like you can't enjoy the process of work anymore. And like you can't see your output. It doesn't feel like you're making anything real, especially when you're working on a screen and all that. And like it doesn't really seem to reward productivity. Like it just seems to reward hierarchy, but hierarchy has to do with like, what they call networking, or like being on good terms with the people above to remain polite. Yeah, it's really not a place where you can find fulfillment in work, and which is why my recommendation for people, and what is what I've been doing actually for over the last years without really being aware of it, is finding something outside of work to find like fulfillment, because there really is no fulfillment to be found in modern work. And it's so sad, right? Because it means that you have to spend time outside of work to basically work. But this is just how it is. There really is no fulfillment to be found in work, in my experience. I mean, I've only held a single job, and I've had it for like a month so far. But I can just see how it is. Like school was the same, and it sucked all the joy from learning. So I really don't see how modern jobs would be better. I feel like they just suck all the joy from, creating something and working, what used to be working. Yeah, like what they call bullshit jobs. But I think it's not even about bullshit jobs, Like bullshit jobs are a thing. I don't think my job is completely bullshit, but like another thing which affects a lot more people, I think, is just the sheer bureaucracy and like the complexity of the world we have been into. There's just so much bureaucracy, so many like hierarchical systems, interdependent, so much like bureaucratic jargon and like obscure words that just you don't even you're not even sure if the person in front of you actually understands what any of those words mean, or is just throwing them out to appear competent and all that. Like yeah, and the illusion of productivity as well. like people pretending to work, or like those pointless meetings and all that. Like yeah, that's just it's just so like I think the worst part about like modern work is that the difficulties feel completely artificial. It feels like we could just like work for like 10 hours a week and there would be the entire same system, but without this like all this pointless bureaucracy and like meeting and doing shit that quote unquote furthers society. This is how it feels like to me. It feels like the work is really fucking pointless and it's just there to like create an appearance of productivity, and because nothing that barely anything that is made, at least in my company, feels like it's actually like bringing value to anyone. So yeah. Yeah. There's one great point that he mentioned in the blog post, which is like towards the end, which is like by the time you realize that this is how like society is set up and like modern jobs are set up, like it's kind of too late. I mean, it's not too late because obviously you can escape, but just not escape, but like you can find something else to do in your life. Like by the time you realize it's too late and you're already in it, and I think I completely agree with that. Like when I was in school, I had certain things I wanted in life, and what I realized now is that I was completely clueless. Like I just didn't know the possibilities in life. So like the choice I was making, they were completely like restricted by by what I was exposed to by society. So the whole thing like follow your dreams from your childhood. Like to me, it's complete bullshit. Like when you're a child, you know nothing about life. You know nothing about yourself. So why should you like follow your dreams from your childhood? You should listen to your current self. Like your current self knows way better. And but society is all about removing that relationship with yourself. It seems like, yeah, like yeah, definitely feel that that by the time you realize what society is and how modern jobs are ordered, it's kind of too late because you're already in it and you're dependent on it for money. Which is why I think like the biggest tip I would have, if like there are people listening to it and they don't like the job, is to become really good at not spending money. Because one, it teaches you what you find important in life, which is so incredibly important, right? To have a relationship with yourself and what you really want. And two, obviously money is really important resource to get out of the modern world, because obviously you will need money for like food and all that. And if you're able to only spend money on things that you actually need and fulfill your other desires through things that don't cost money, then you're in a really good spot, because you don't need to like depend as much on a job that you don't like. So that would be like my main piece of advice, which I think I'm pretty decent at that actually, like not spending money on things I need. Yeah, like right now I'm just like putting like 90 to 95% of my income. I've only been paid twice, no. I'm putting like 19 to 95% of my income on another account that like has more interest rate. Like it's a savings account. Yeah, but I'm planning on like learning more about money and how best to manage it to like uh, not just keep it, but like have interests on it and compound such that I don't have to work as much. But this is a side rant. I think I have been ranting way too much. If you've been listening to this long, I would just be curious to what is your relationship with modern jobs? Do you dislike them or not? If you clicked on this video, it's very likely that you dislike them, right? Do you find your job meaningful? And do you think that other people find their job meaningful? This would be my questions if you listen to this far. But yeah, my vlogs have been so long lately. I've been so rambly. I think I'm going to try really being way more concise. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.